Have you ever noticed that some women never seem to chase love, yet somehow, love keeps finding its way back to them? It's easy to believe that attraction is about beauty, saying the right words, or knowing exactly how to keep a man's attention. But after watching countless relationships unfold over the years, one truth becomes surprisingly clear. The women men remember most are rarely the loudest, the youngest, or the most glamorous. They're the ones who understand something deeper about human nature. Today, we're going to explore 6 psychological principles that quietly shape attraction long after first impressions have faded. These aren't manipulative games or dating tricks designed to make someone fall for you overnight. Instead, they're timeless habits that create emotional safety, genuine curiosity, and lasting respect. The very qualities that often inspire a man to move closer instead of pulling away. If you've ever wondered why one woman is forgotten while another stays on a man's mind for years, stay with me. By the end of this video, you may discover that the answer has far less to do with changing who you are and far more to do with understanding how meaningful connection is truly built. One boundaries I remember a friend of mine, I'll call her Diane, sitting at her kitchen table 3 years after her husband passed. A man she'd been seeing for a few weeks had just asked her to change her weekend plans again. Her first instinct was to say yes. That had been her instinct for 31 years of marriage. This time she typed one sentence instead. "That weekend doesn't work for me." Then she put the phone down and waited, half expecting him to disappear. He didn't disappear. He called her that same evening, and he sounded more interested, not less. That moment has stayed with me, because it captures something most of us were never taught. Somewhere between raising children, running a household, and decades of putting someone else's needs first, many women quietly lose the ability to say no without guilt. It isn't a character flaw. It's muscle memory, built over a lifetime of accommodation. A boundary held with calm, without anger, and without apology, is not what pushes a good man away. It's often the first real evidence he gets that you value yourself. Men notice self-respect before they notice almost anything else, and they respond to it, even when they can't explain why. If you've spent years saying yes when you meant no, this isn't about becoming harder or colder. It's about remembering a version of yourself that existed before you learned to shrink. That version of you is still there, waiting to be asked back. Saying no was the first thing Diane relearned. What surprised her next had nothing to do with what she refused, and everything to do with what happened once someone finally remembered the small things she said yes to. Being remembered and asked about. I've noticed something over the years that most people never say out loud. Ask a man in his 60s about his week and watch his face. There's often a small pause before he answers, as if the question itself catches him off guard. Not because it's unusual, but because it's been a while since anyone asked it and actually waited for the answer. Women tend to keep talking to each other. A sister, an old friend from work, a daughter on the phone every Sunday. Men, in my experience, often let that whole job fall to one person, usually a wife, and never build a backup. When that one person is gone, through divorce or loss, there's no second circle to lean on. Just quiet where conversation used to be. I don't think this makes men fragile. I think it makes them honest about something. Women have often understood for years that being asked about your day isn't small talk. It's maintenance for a life. So when you remember a detail he mentioned weeks ago, or ask a real follow-up question instead of a polite one, you're not performing a dating skill. You're offering him something his life has likely been missing for longer than either of you would guess. That kind of attention doesn't wear off. It compounds. Being remembered opens the door. What you do once you're standing in that doorway, whether you show real excitement or just polite tolerance, decides whether he stays. 3. Genuine enthusiasm. There's a particular look on someone's face when they're pretending to care. The eyes move a half-second slower than the mouth. The nod lands right on cue, a little too on cue. Most of us couldn't name what we're seeing, but we feel it instantly, and something in us quietly pulls back. I believe the opposite is just as visible. When a woman is genuinely curious about the garden someone's been working on all month, or actually wants to hear how the grandkids' visit went, it shows before she says a single word. Her questions get more specific. She remembers what he mentioned last time without trying to. This matters more at this stage of life than it did at 25. By now, most people have sat on the receiving end of years of half-attention. Distracted partners. Children who stopped listening the moment they became teenagers. Coworkers nodding while checking their phones. Real interest, the kind that isn't rehearsed, starts to feel rare, and rare things get remembered. You don't need to force yourself to be fascinated by everything he says. That would just be its own kind of performance. Find the 1 or 2 things that genuinely pull your attention, and let that show plainly. 1 real question beats 10 polite ones every single time. Real enthusiasm opens a door too. But there's a deeper layer underneath it, one that has less to do with words, and more to do with how present you actually are in the room. 4. 5 quiet elements that build real closeness at this age. Ask yourself something honest for a moment. When was the last time you felt safe enough with someone to stop performing, even for a few minutes? That question sits underneath everything I'm about to say. Closeness, the kind that actually lasts, isn't built from grand gestures. It comes down to 5 quiet things. Trust, so your guard can soften instead of staying half-braced. Presence, actually being in the room instead of replaying the day's errands in your head. A mutual pull of curiosity toward each other, not performed desire, but real interest in who this person is becoming. Permission to move slowly, because rushing has never once made anyone feel more wanted. And something that lingers after, a kind of emotional residue that tells you this mattered. At 20, these 5 things happen almost by accident. At this age, they rarely do. Your body has changed. Your pace has changed. And there's likely a person from your past whose rhythm you learned so well it became automatic, which makes learning someone new's rhythm feel strange at first, even when it's good. So here's the real question worth sitting with. Which of these 5 do you actually offer someone? And which have you quietly stopped expecting for yourself? That answer says more about your next relationship than anything on a dating profile ever will. Knowing what you need is one thing. Learning to read what someone else needs, especially when their rhythm is nothing like the one you spent decades memorizing, is a different skill entirely. 5. Energy matching. I've noticed that some of the friction in a new relationship at this age has nothing to do with compatibility. It's simply 2 people speaking different rhythms and mistaking that for a mismatch. One person texts in long paragraphs, thinking it out loud as they go. The other sends 3 words and calls it a full update. One wants a phone call every evening. The other finds daily calls a little much and prefers one longer conversation a week instead. Neither is wrong. They're just out of sync, the way 2 clocks can both keep good time and still never agree on the hour. For decades, you likely knew someone's rhythm so well, you stopped noticing it was a rhythm at all. You knew when to call, when to wait, when silence meant nothing was wrong. That fluency took years to build, and most of us forget it was ever learned rather than natural. So, when a new person's pace feels off, slower here, faster there, quieter than you expected, that isn't necessarily a red flag. It might just be an unfamiliar rhythm you haven't learned yet. I'd rather you stay curious about the mismatch a little longer than most people do. Ask how he prefers to stay in touch instead of assuming. Adjust without losing yourself in the process. That patience, more than chemistry, is often what decides whether two people ever really find their footing together. And while you're learning his rhythm, remember you're bringing your own weight into the room too. What you do with that weight is the last thing I want to talk about. 6. Being lightness, not a burden. There's a kind of math some people do in relationships, tallying who called first, who gave more this month. I've never seen that math lead anywhere good. At this age, balance rarely looks like 50 and 50 in any given week. Some weeks, his hip is acting up and he needs you to carry the plans. Other weeks, your daughter is going through something and he's the one making sure you eat and rest. A good partnership bends with whatever life is doing. It doesn't run on a ledger. What matters more than fairness, I think, is a simpler question. Does being with you make his life feel lighter, or like one more thing to manage? At 20, the weight in someone's life is usually career stress. At this age, it's different. An aching knee. A grandchild you worry about from a distance. A retirement account that keeps you up some nights. Nobody at this stage needs a partner who adds to that pile. They need someone who doesn't flinch at the weight and doesn't add to it either. Not by demanding attention on a schedule, not by turning quiet evenings into tests of commitment. Be the kind of presence someone exhales around. That, more than any grand gesture, is what makes a person impossible to leave. 6 things. A boundary held with calm. Attention that remembers the small details. Enthusiasm that never has to be faked. 5 quiet elements that outlast any single moment. Patience for a rhythm that isn't yours yet, and a life you make lighter instead of heavier. None of them ask you to become someone new. They ask you to come back to someone you already were, before decades of putting everyone else first taught you to take up less space. I spent 63 years learning this the hard way. I'd rather you learn it gently, from someone who's already made the mistakes. You don't need a strategy to be loved again at this age. You need to remember who you were before you learned to shrink. Is there a version of yourself, the one before caretaking, before years of coming last, that you'd like to meet again? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.